I just got this aluminum mold for the AirTag Keychains I'm making, and I'm super excited if this mold holds up to my expectations. I work on this desktop injection molder called TARS, and over the last months I work with FDM molds, MSLA molds, and now I get to try the first professionally made aluminum mold with ejector pins and some other cool features that I want to show you in this video. This mold is sort of a benchmark for my machine, and it produces small AirTag keychains that I initially planned to sell on Etsy, so I think a small comparison to other manufacturing methods, like 3D printing, is very interesting. So let's see how this goes. Before I start with the test, I always mount the plate on the movable side of the injection molder. I can just slide it out from the machine to have everything more accessible for the assembly. And once that is done, I can place it back in the machine. Just look at all these tiny ejector pins that extend to demold the part. In total, in this mold, there are 25 ejector pins with 3 different purposes. 20 of these pins are just there to demold a finished part. 4 of them have the purpose to make sure that all these pins retract to the same position, and one very special pin in the middle has another purpose that I'm going to explain soon. I usually make most of the parts in this machine from shattered plastic flakes, but since I run out of flakes very quickly, I got myself some virgin pellets for this test. Those were provided by Unique Zero Plastics as transparent pellets and are made of polypropylene. I flushed the machine for some time just to get the extruder loaded, and these tiny balls that look like fish egg are the actual pellets that go into the extruder. This red 3D printed screw feeds the pellets into the extruder. If they were just loaded directly, they would melt and clog the entrance to the extruder, so I built this whole 3D printed dosing mechanism that feeds those pellets or shredded plastic waste into the extruder. Making this work took so much time. The first version of this tank was made of just way too many parts. The feed screw is 3D printed, and the motor passes with different time spans between each break, which allows me to adapt to overall transported mass. I didn't want to use another module to adapt the motor RPM, so it became this workaround which is really functional. The pulse length and the overall transported mass has to be adapted depending on the material that I use. The bulk density of pellets is much higher compared to plastic flakes. That means more volume has to be fed into the extruder to get the same mass flow. Okay, so first injection shot with transparent polypropylene pellets, and also the first time I try these granules in combination with an aluminum mold. As you can see, this shot was a bit short and the mold wasn't completely filled, so for the coming shots I slightly increased the material amount that is injected. It's always a bit of a finding out process until I get all the parameters right, but the overall quality of the material and the way that it flows in the mold already looks quite good. During the second shot you see something really interesting. The whole package of the ejector pins hasn't fully retracted because the springs that I use here are a bit too weak, and so these 4 pins that help push back the whole package are triggered and they pop everything right back in place before the mold completely closes. As soon as they touch the fixed half of the mold, all the pins jump back into the right position and a new part can be ejected. There's also a bit of drooling with this polypropylene material, and that's why you see me sometimes cutting the sprue with a scissor. What's also really positive to see is that all the parts stay on the right side of the mold, which is the movable side. So the problem that I had before with the MSLA mold is not an issue here. Making one of these keychain pairs takes roughly 88 seconds, of which 10 seconds is the time required to fill the mold, 20 seconds is the cooldown time, and roughly 1 minute is the time it takes to open the mold and close it, and also to eject the part. I'm not maxing out the parameters for this one, so I think if you really want to go for speed, it could be even faster than that. These are the first 36 shots that I made with this material. Each part weighs around 9 grams, and the overall quality of each part looks really good. It's also fun where you can see the gradual color change from the shattered plastic flakes that were blue to this transparent material. The surfaces of each part are completely smooth and almost filled into the last corners. I just think I need some more temperature on the mold and apply more pressure at the end, and then the quality will be almost as good as from an industrial injection mold. Another adaptation of the process could help with the drooling, the same way that you retract a bit of the filament before any traveling movement on a printer. You could think of the extruder retracting some material before the mold opens so that the plastic doesn't drool from the nozzle. Another option would be of course to add a shut-off nozzle that prevents these strings on the sprue completely. What I also really like is that all the parts now stay on the right side of the mold, and they are also demolded really well from the ejector pins. Let's look at one of these parts in detail. What's cool with these transparent pellets is that you can see all the details that are hidden inside the part, like these small overmolded M3 inserts. I will try some master batches in the future to colorize these parts, then they won't be visible anymore, but for now it's really cool that you can see these tiny brass features. In order to get these threads into the molded part, I place the inserts over a shaft that you can see here in the mold. Before that was a whole process on its own and took at least 30 seconds up to a minute for each insert. Another interesting detail is this small shaft here, which is the most crucial part when it comes to determining on which side of the mold a finished part remains. But before I get into that, I want to talk about a product that I've been using for the last month and thank the sponsor for this video, which is Wolfbox, and the product is their new MF200 turbofan. It's a battery-powered device that helps me clean my workshop and all kinds of equipment I work with. I don't have compressed air in the workshop, so the portability of this thing is incredibly useful. It's also a lot of fun just for starting fires when we're having a barbecue. I actually had so much fun with this device that I built a small Venturi style blower and tried to make a tiny isopropanol flamethrower. It didn't work as well as I expected, but that's probably a good thing since I still have my eyebrows. It's honestly pretty crazy how much power such a small battery device can create. I especially look forward to getting this one because I really needed to dust off my PC after 6 years of using it. If you think you could use this product for yourself, you'll find the link in the video description. Now back to the video. As I mentioned before, one of these pins is a bit different than all the others and has a tiny undercut which was grinded into it. I had problems with the molds that I used before. Those were SLA molds and the part just stayed frequently on the wrong side, which was on top of being annoying very work intense, so the machine couldn't just run automatically and I had to remove most of the parts by hand. So with this new mold and this ejector pin, there's a cool mechanism that helps the parts to stay on the right side where I want them to be. Let me just quickly show you what's happening here. On the left side you see the mold in a closed position. When the material is being injected, the material is liquid when it gets injected and fills the undercut on the ejector pin. When the material solidifies and the mold opens, the undercut on this pin pulls the material out from the fixed side of the mold and makes sure the part stays on the movable side. It only allows for the part to be released when the ejector pins start to extend. Then the finished part isn't blocked anymore from any of the sides and can demold downwards. Here in the cross-section view of this carabiner mold, it's a bit more visible what I mean, and that's something I plan to implement into every coming mold because it's a super reliable way to make sure that the part stays on the right side. This whole mold design was made by a company called Priomold. They manufactured the mold and helped me a lot in terms of knowledge on ejector pins and how to use them for my advantages. If you're in that field and you need an injection molded part or a 3D printed part, feel free to check out their website. This is not a sponsored segment, I'm just really happy that they helped me, and if this small shout out brings them a customer, even better. Now I want to compare making these parts in my injection molder to 3D printing, which is obviously a pretty unfair comparison. 3D prints are hollow on the inside, they are not one full body like an injection mold, which makes the parts weaker and not as strong as an injection molded part. While on the other hand, you have to manufacture a full injection mold before you can even start making a part. I know this comparison is a bit unfair, considering also the cost of the machine that I'm working on and the cost of a 3D printer nowadays, but it's still just fun to put some numbers side by side. I can put 7 of these pairs on a print bed of a Pusher Mark IV, and so I will go with a batch of 7 to compare the production. Making 7 prints from PETG with a standard setting takes 219 minutes, while it takes 14 minutes on my injection molder. The material cost is also very interesting. I use granules, which cost roughly 4 cents for one part, while the filament material is at 6 cents. Also consider, the 3D print is hollow on the inside, so more material is needed for every injection molded piece. Obviously the machine cost of a Pusher Mark IV is at roughly €1,000. There are cheaper printers than that, and the machine that I work on you can add a 0, and that goes without the mold and the time required to make it. For comparing the two parts strength-wise, you would have to 3D print a full block of material and also decrease the layer height, just to make this a fair comparison, since the injection molded piece is also just one full block of material, what would obviously really increase the production time for the 3D print. I haven't really found a good way to compare these two parts strength-wise, so I will save this up for another video. When it comes to the detail and surface finish of each part, it's pretty obvious that an injection molded piece has the upper hand here. And if you look very closely, you can actually see the negative mill pattern from the aluminum mold. Only while recording this I noticed that I could go so much deeper into this topic. For example, the average power consumption per piece, so I might have to make a second part for this, but for now I really hope you enjoyed this video and are as hyped as I am for this technology. I think there's so much potential for desktop injection molding, and it's also just so much fun to work on this subject that isn't really fully explored yet. If you'd like to support my printed projects, you can check out my work on Etsy or become a Patreon supporter. I'm most active on Instagram, where I share the latest updates and behind the scenes progress on projects like this one.